Shalom, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And we have another exciting beginning to a First Century Torah Talk. I am the host, Solomon Lopez. We are with Tzefania Pappas, Bryan Sanchez, and Ephraim Rimona Frank, all the way from Israel. We're excited to share a lot of what we have been exploring in the last few weeks. The Torah portions are coming alive like never before, with so many different things going on in the world. We have such a unique opportunity to gather together as family. So again, we look at this as from a family perspective. Our goal here is to be absolutely Messiah-centered, Spirit-led, and allow for the scriptures to find themselves. This is something that is a conviction I have definitely witnessed, and there's a very specific reason that those who are on this broadcast are on here for that reason, because we see such an importance to look at this as a family document and to look at things from a spiritual perspective. And so much of the need right now in the body of Messiah is for us to look at the freedom and how the Father looks at these events in Scripture, what they mean for us today, and how much freedom are we gaining personally in our walk with this, versus it turning into some academic study or turning into something theological. We're definitely grateful that Abba has orchestrated this and allowed us to come together, even over the internet, over Zoom. We could still do this. So we'll open up. Ephraim Rimona, I think we had some thoughts from our last time that you guys shared some really wonderful things about how the Father looks at the events in the Exodus, as well as the judicial aspects. And I believe where we left off is where we were talking about the crossing the Red Sea and some of the themes with Passover, this Passover season coming up. So we'll kind of open the floor and see what the Father's spoken to you guys about that.
Well, certainly the parashot that you mentioned is a beautiful time to study it, because of fact that we are entering into the Pesach season and the preparation for the Pesach. There's so much basically to talk about, but I don't remember exactly what was in the previous one, but you suggested starting around the time that they've exited already. The Israelites have exited, and of course we've all exited as well spiritually through the blood of the Lamb and the freedom from the Pharaoh of this world and the defeat of Pharaoh. And of course we really can understand also if we know Israel's position before the Almighty, that Israel was called and chosen already in the loins of the forefathers to be His people, and to serve Him in a very specific role. And this identity to who Israel is very important in the day we're living, because if we see the patterns throughout history, the Exodus and their slavery in Egypt really is the beginning of like I said, a pattern that goes throughout history. It never the people were never subjected to a foreign power more than the time that Yahweh would allow. But He always brought Israel out. A good example of that is with in the book of Joshua. The book of Judges, where periodically a nation would come in because of iniquity and sin in Israel, and they would dominate Israel. And then the Father would bring them out, raise up a deliverer. So this pattern continued along throughout all of Israel and Judah's history. So we know the reason why is because they have this calling, this irrevocable calling from the Almighty, from 4,000 years ago, from the forefathers, and this carries throughout the history. And we expect it also in the latter days. And we actually can see that very clearly in Jeremiah 50 and 51. But because people are just beginning their walk and their understanding of the importance of knowing this identity as Israel, and of course the other Israel, the two Israels, the house of Judah and the house of Joseph, that these stories that we're reading about, these historical stories of our forefathers, become a very clear spiritual pattern for us. And so, as we've seen from previous Torah studies, we've been bringing out those patterns. And we, at this point, I guess, as you mentioned, we're now at the mouth of the Red Sea. And I think you wanted Rimona to share something about the what we saw in relationship to some of the places and the directions, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being brought to the Red.
We're all waiting there. While you're all waiting to hit sea.
All waiting there. We're being brought to that place, and there's a significance in the name where they, I guess, where they were gathered, Pi Hahiot. And so that's it's something I think that is relevant for this hour for many people.
Yeah, and it seems time factor was on the third day. That if we look back and follow their journey, it seems that they would have crossed the sea on the third day. But just before that, the evening before, and when I say the third day, I mean the third day from the actual Exodus, from the feast of Matzot, or would you say it's from from the 15th and 14th of the evening? 14th?
No, 15th from the Exodus.
Okay. Yeah. So just before they're about to gain their liberty, it seemed they in chapter 14 and verse 2, Yehovah speaks to Moses saying, "Speak to the children of Israel that they turn and camp before Pi Hachirot, between Migdal and the sea, opposite Baal Tzafon, and you shall camp before it by the sea." And the names, those titles, seem quite significant. If we slightly change Chirot, as it's pronounced in Hebrew, to Cherut, it means that they encamped by the mouth. P would be mouth of, the mouth of liberty, the mouth of liberty, the opening of liberty. They were just about to gain their liberty on the third day, what will be the third day, which is when they cross the sea. And it so happened that opposite it, there was this place called the Baal of the North. And we know who it is that sits at the end of the North, and who tries to has had his attempt at what would be the word, trying to supersede Yehovah, trying to take the place, trying to sit in the throne. Of course, not successfully, but it's very significant that just as they're about to gain their freedom, they're facing this entity, this place. Now we don't know if it was actually there was actually some kind of a spiritual entity there, or that title is just simply symbolic. But there's definitely significance to it, and I wonder if we also cannot apply to our own lives, both as a people and individually, just before the deliverance and coming into the freedom and liberty that is in Yeshua, that the enemy is not lurking there and trying to tempt us to go the other way.
I think he's probably sitting there, rubbing his hands together and saying, "Oh, the army of Pharaoh is right behind. They're going to come and they're going to destroy these people because they can't go anywhere. They can't cross the Red Sea. They can't go anywhere." So, he's probably sitting there waiting, to see what's going to happen when, Pharaoh and his army arrive at their camping site at this place. But I think it's quite significant, the door of liberty. And the fact that it's the third day, remember, Yeshua rose on the third day, and that was a Yom Rishon, that was the first day of the week, in which he was that wave offering before the Father so that we could be accepted. So if we think of that moment in time, and when a believer comes to believe in Yeshua and confess that he is Lord and he was raised from the dead, that the Father raised him from the dead, that we then go to our Red Sea experience, in other words, to water baptism. And it's amazing how many people, and especially here, especially with the House of Judah side of the family, will resist the baptism of water, the immersion of water. But its significance is seen here in this episode, even with the names. It's your doorway to liberty. This is, again, I think, so important that they make this journey into the mikvah, that they make this journey into the submersion, into the Red Sea. Mm-hmm. And once they do that and come up on the other side, we see a beautiful parallel at the end of chapter 14. Do you have anything to say more to say about this?
I just one more point. It's interesting that some time goes by. Yehovah says that he is going to harden some more the heart of Pharaoh, and then now the Egyptians find out what has happened, and they are going to chase Israel. Mm-hmm. And so we read in verse 9, so the Egyptians pursued them, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, his horsemen and his army, and overtook them camping by the sea beside Pi Hachirot or Achirut before Baal Tzfon. So that threat, that spiritual and physical threat that was looming has actually come to its peak when the armies of the enemy caught up with them right at that place. Of all the possible places, the armies of Pharaoh and his chariots caught them up in that very place, at the opening or the mouth of liberty before the Baal of the north. And this is where they get very, very fearful. So this is a point of decision. This is a point of turning right there.
I think in many ways we're being tested in the area of fear in the days we're living, that the enemy, the Baal Tzefon, is pressing down upon the faith people to really now look and trust the Almighty in the time in which we're living, and not let fear. And I'm not sure that we're going to have, it's going to be a battle. And I think one of the ways of winning that battle is to, by the faith, step into that water, and then the sea will open, mm-hmm. and the victory, and freedom will come, and we'll have peace in our heart. I think this is very important at this time to realize that we are being pressed again by the armies of Pharaoh, if you will, the armies of this world. Actually, it's more of a Babylonian system, and the armies of this Babylonian system are pressing us more than ever into submitting to whatever direction that this world is going at this time. But again, we can really take comfort, and we usually use this in chapter, the beginning of chapter 15, when, of course, when they cross over and they end up on the other side, and they see the mighty act of the Almighty close those waters over Pharaoh, the chariots, all the power of Egypt. Mm-hmm. When someone is mikvahd or someone is immersed, when we bring them up, we usually have them read this and actually look back at the water that they just come out of and begin to sing or to say or to repeat this by faith. We will sing to Yahovah, for he is highly exalted. For he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider has been hurled into the sea. Yahweh is my strength and song. He has become my salvation. This is my Elohim. I will praise him. My father's Elohim, and I will exalt him. Jehovah is a warrior. Jehovah is his name. The Pharaoh, his chariots, or Satan and his chariots, whatever we want to say, his army has been cast into the sea, and the choicest of the officers of ground. I mean, what a way to step into our life in the Spirit and in the faith, is to have this kind of reality that was based upon what the Father has provided through Yeshua's death, his burial, his resurrection, and through this immersion into the water, and to come out of it and look back at those waters and say, by faith, this is my reality now. This is the reality I need to turn and walk into the wilderness. And if we notice, after they did that, they had this great reverence, this fear of Yehovah, and that's what they began their walk with. They began with the testimony of the power of their deliverance, and this is the beginning of our faith walk. This is what it should look like. It's not about the religion we step in, not about religion at all. It's about the revelation of a mighty Elohim who acted through Yeshua the Lamb and started our journey out. And then the third day, he rose from that grave, and we walk into those waters of immersion, believing that the Almighty has. And it's also, if we look at Romans chapter 4 and study that whole chapter, it's all about the seed of Israel. It's all about the seed of Israel and the evidence of the faith of our father Abraham, and the evidence to believe that the Father raised Yeshua from the dead, is the evidence of the faith of our father Abraham. That is our birthmark. That is our witness. That's our testimony as to who we are. That's as simple as this restoration identity message is. All those, Paul says in verse 16, all those who are of the faith, Abraham is your father, and the evidence is you believe that the Father raised Yeshua from the dead. And then you go into that immersion, and you come out with this tremendous revelation of the faithfulness of a covenant-keeping Elohim.
This particular passage right here is the Father really impacted me very early on. It was actually in 1997 when I first just came into Torah and starting to understand about this whole thing. And I was going to be going to a Bridges for Peace conference on the weekend. And during that week, I had an amazing dream. And in the dream, I saw he was a teaching dream. He was saying the children of Israel went through one giant immersion. That's what he was explaining to me. And I literally saw it in Technicolor. I saw the crossing going through and the waters parting. And he said, this is one giant immersion for the nation of Israel. And I go, what? Wow. Okay. So I get to the weekend, this weekend event for Bridges for Peace. And then they announced what they're going to be doing. And I says, well, first of all, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be, in an artistic way, doing a reenactment of the parting of the sea. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, I'm getting all excited. And then I see this going on. And then the speaker begins to speak on the topic that the parting of the sea was one giant immersion. And I was just totally, I mean, I wow, this is amazing. And as I see what he was doing, he was actually preparing me that, I'm going to start washing the filth of the world off of you that caused you not to see who your identity was. And you need to go through that washing of my word to come to the place of knowing who you are, that you are Israel, and you need to go through that same parting of the sea moment in your life as well. Otherwise, you're not going to get there. And I think that was a prophetic calling. I came into Torah, but you got to find out some more things. Whose constitution is this now that you're under? And what is your identity?
So with that, we see Bryan. You want to share some thoughts on what you just heard on the? We'll kind of start over here, but if you want to share your thoughts, Bryan, on the crossing the Red Sea and.
I just can't. The whole time listening to Ephraim speak on our Red Sea moment I just keep thinking about the Greater Exodus. That's all I keep thinking about. And I also go back to the teachings that I was brought up to believe, and that I can't help but go back to that. Like, I really hope that a lot of Christians will go back and study the scriptures again and conduct a do-over, if you will, on the great escape that we were taught as growing up. Because when you really dissect the scriptures and you really read and study the scriptures, that's not going to happen. So that's what I keep thinking about when I was hearing Ephraim talk about that. I'm like, man, the churches have to go back and study this again, because it's not going to be a get out of jail free card like in the game of Monopoly. We're going to go through the Greater Exodus. So that's what I was thinking about the whole time listening to Ephraim.
You just brought something up to Bryan that I was thinking about, and that was in reference to it's Ezekiel 36, 23 through 27.
Mm-hmm.
I will sanctify my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, which you have profaned in their midst, and the nations shall know that I am Yehovah, says Adonai Elohim, when I shall be sanctified in you before their eyes. For I will take you from among the nations and gather you out all the countries, and will bring you into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean. From all your filthiness, from all your idols will I cleanse you. I will also give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit within you. And I will take away the stony heart of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my ordinances and do them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but now, a lot of the identity, I've seen in your walk and those who are in Torah, like when you spend a little bit more time, year, 2 years goes by, you start finding yourself in the wilderness, and, like everyone who's in the wilderness, you find yourself possibly circling the same mountain, which, that's why Tzefania and I, we spend quite a bit of time diving into some of those issues and what would keep us there. And I want to circle around to another idea that in a really important topic of fear, and kind of tying into what Rimona was talking about, where they were at the Red Sea, and what was presenting themselves, from the north. We can see it manifest, and not to get too out there about it, but I'm here in the state of Texas in the last few weeks, in the month of February, we experienced quite a bit of an Arctic blast from the north. And, as much as people want to just attribute it like, oh, it's just weather patterns or whatnot, I really saw it as something more spiritual, more deeper, because it put a lot of people into fear, trepidation, panic, more than usual. And you saw the fallout from a lot of that. And so if there's any meaning to something coming from the north, disrupting everyday life, here, that's what a lot of us are experiencing spiritually. There's something coming of maybe a spiritual Arctic blast that's coming, and there's this coldness, and this coldness, it paralyzes you like a fear does. And as we explore these spiritual topics, Tzefania, I'll get your thoughts on this first, because we see where people that we have either witnessed through their walk and through testimonies of how they overcome fear. And it's not because they end up keeping scripture so well, or that they understand something theologically so well. And that it really comes back to the simplicity of what the scriptures say about how a perfect love casts out this fear. But we don't know this perfect love if we're not going through the process, like Ephraim Rimona are sharing, of actually going through the mikvah, which, for those who aren't familiar with that word, mikvah is the a Hebrew term for water immersion, which now, of course, we use the word baptism or but we know it truly, it's water immersion. So we're not going through the process, yet we want to bypass all of this and somehow use what do we use instead of the word? We use modern psychology, we use positive thinking. Yeah. We use all these different affirmations and reinforcements with our own words and logic and reason, and we're coming up short. So, Tzefania, what do you think? I mean, overcoming fear in these times when something like maybe a spiritual Arctic blast comes into our lives, what do we do?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I think this is a time right now where I'm seeing multiple layers of fear are getting exposed at various levels of it. And to the point that you might think that you don't have fear, then all of a sudden something comes along and hits, and now you're in the middle of it. And what are you going to do? And so what he's basically challenging us right now to, are we really going to get to that place where we do put our total faith, hope, and trust in him? And that is getting to that place. That's the place where we will begin to isolate ourselves and cast fear away and send it to the dry place. And that the faith, hope, and love, we go to Corinthians right there where it's talking about faith, hope, and love. And then he says the greatest of these is love. And what do we know about love? Perfect love casts out all fear. And so we have to get to that place of all these unloving spirits that we've actually been entertaining, to the point that we will find out and get to meet the one who is perfect love. And I think it's a relationship issue that we don't even know him yet. We have not gotten to the point to see the depths and the height and the depth, and we'll never get there, of his love, obviously, but we still need to go deeper. And there's deeper depths to his love that we need to go. And that's an immersion in itself. Let's just soak up into the depths of his love that he has for us. And then when these things come our way, well, we won't enter into fear. We will know that, his provision is there. He cares for us. I mean, there's chaos all around. I might not know where I'm going to get my next meal. I might be out of water here. But Yeshua has said how much he loved us, that he said, hey, look at the birds of the field. Look at the flower. Look how clothed they are. And the bird, I feed them all the time. And so, but you are my most precious creation, and how much more I care for you. And those are the challenges that we go through. And they're all about teaching us. Don't go into the area of condemnation either. That's another spirit. Mm-hmm. And realize that these are teaching moments to get us into that place where we start bathing in his love.
Mm-hmm.